Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today for my first video in 2 months since I posted my meet recap, I want to talk a little bit about post-meet blues, YOLO lifts, and give you an update on my training. I did want to get this video out a little bit sooner, but right after I filmed my meet recap, things in our backyard project kind of picked up. So we had contractors here all the time. The garage was basically trashed 24/7 because they were working in here as well. That finally wrapped up a few weeks ago. So not only did we do a nice big cleaning of the garage, we finally purchased the remainder of the stall mats that we needed to finish out the floor. And then my husband moved some things around. So it feels so much bigger in here. And we're finally getting a plan together for what's the next things that we're gonna get to expand on our equipment. So to get right into the topic, post-meet blues can definitely take over right after a competition. You kind of go from the peak of your strength to all of it dumps out and you're kind of left with what now? And just an overall feeling of being lost. I'm someone who thrives off having a plan and having numbers to hit, even when I'm using RPE. I knew I didn't want to get back on a program for at least a week after the meet, but coming out here and just doing random bodybuilding things just isn't appealing to me. Some people will take the full week off after a meet, and I didn't really want to do that. So I did probably the number one thing you shouldn't do, and that was seek revenge. So if you remember the absolute roller coaster that was deadlifts in my last meet, I left pretty disappointed that I didn't even get my hands on 350 because I really do feel like I had it that day. So after 2 full days of rest, obviously the first thing I would do is come out here and deadlift. So I was working singles, obviously with the goal to get my redemption at 350. 325 moved, not like it should. Probably should have just stopped there. Nothing felt great leading up to it. I felt like it was basically my first time ever deadlifting. So I followed the plan that I had in place for the meet, which was 325, 340, 350. 340 I lost at my knees because my right hand started rolling. So in typical Renee fashion, I went for 350 anyway. And even though I failed it, I actually failed it less than the last time I tried it, which was about a year ago. It like cracked the floor and that was all the further I got it. So at least this time I got it to my knees. I do feel like the strength is there. I just obviously wasn't the best time to be trying this right after the meet. So the next YOLO lift that I went after was overhead press. I haven't done overhead press in quite some time. I used to do it all the time when I was running 531 and then through the Candido phase of my training. And the best I ever hit was 100 for 2, but I never was able to get 105. So I thought, let's just see where my overhead press is and hopefully hit that 105. Well, I got to 95 and it was pretty hard, but why not just go for it anyway? So I went for 100 and didn't get it. And while I was pretty bummed that day, getting 95 for 1 after not touching that movement for several months really isn't that bad after all. But those were the only 2 training sessions I did that week. I did a few accessories on each of the days and then took the rest of the week off to start my new program on Sunday. Now I knew in the final weeks of my meet prep that I needed to go into a volume block after, but I really didn't want to have to think too much about it after having programmed for myself for the prior 6 months. And this was around the time that Steve DeNovi put out his free 15-week program. And I really liked the format of it. I liked how it used RPE, but also gave you ranges of what the weight should be for that specific RPE based off your maxes. I also liked how the back downs were calculated based on your top sets. So this also meant it would be the first time I would be using Google Worksheets on my phone rather than pen and paper, which that's how I've always had programs laid out, was writing them. And even though I still prefer writing them, I've gotten used to the Google Sheet and I don't mind it at all. Now I'm not going to go week by week because that would take forever. So I'm just going to kind of give you an overall highlight of the first 2 blocks that I just finished, block 2 this morning actually. Now the first week back was probably hardest mentally on me just because everything feels so heavy and you're still kind of in that post-meet blues phase where you're wondering if you're ever even going to feel strong again. But after you get a week under your belt, you feel back in the groove again and things quickly progress. So I ran the program right as it's written, and I'm not going to get into all the details. You can go look it up and see see how it's laid out. The only thing I did add was the overload work in the bench, just because I feel like my bench responds well to that, and I didn't want to go 15 weeks without that overload work. So I'm just going to go through each lift in review, starting with squats. So block 1 was 5s, and my first week was 205 by 5, and that was on the low end of the RPE range, and it felt rough. But fast forward to week 3, I was pumping out 230 for 5. So that quickly progressed as expected, coming off the meet and then getting back into programming. So with how 230 felt, looking into week 4 is the heavy week, and then it goes, week 5 is kind of like a deload week before you start the following block. So I had in my mind that I wanted to go for a PR, a 5 rep PR. 245 by 5 would have been a PR, but in my mind I was going for 250. Probably should have stuck with it, going for 245. I did my first 3 reps. My best 250 is 250 by 3. So I did 250 for 3, and by that point I was questioning my life. You can see how much I cut depth on rep 4, and I knew it, but I thought maybe I can at least just push out a 3/4 rep, whatever, just to move the weight 5 times, and I didn't even have a half rep left in me and ended up failing that. So the worst part about failing a squat is unracking everything to put it back up, to reset up, to do your back downs. And I feel like that's a true test of character, is to do your back downs after failing a top set of squats. So the secondary squat day was high bar pause, and I love high bar, don't so much love pause, but I was really happy to end the block with 220 for 4 high bar pause. The last time I did high bar all through my prep, but I hadn't been pausing it. I had previously, I don't even remember what my best set there was, but it definitely wasn't close to 220 for 4. So for block 2, the main squat day dropped to a set of 4, and it also added in a single after. So my set of 4 ended up going from 215 on week 1 to ending with 240 for 4 for the last week, and then my heaviest single was 255, which was the heaviest that I had touched since the meet. So well under my best, but I was pretty happy to move that. The secondary squat day was comp squat triples with high bar back downs, and I ended up with 245 for 3, which isn't a PR, but I was very happy with how it moved. So for bench, this program runs 3 bench days a week, which is exactly how I liked it. And block 1, the main day, was sets of 5, but also had a single after that. I ended with 150 for 5, and all of my singles for all 4 weeks were between 160 and 165, so I was pretty happy with that. Secondary day is close grip, which isn't something I've ever really focused on. I would kind of just throw it in here and there, so I was excited to have something new to push. And basically every session was setting new PRs, and I ended with 150 for 4, which I was pretty happy with. Now the third day is just a super light Larson day, and that's also the day that I put the board press on. Over the 4 weeks, I progressed from 170 for 3 to hitting a PR of 200 for 3, which is something I had failed over the summer during prep. So for block 2 on bench, it shifts the priority to the single rather than the rep work. So it's a top single and then was followed by a set of 4. Each week my single increased to ending with a tied PR of 175. Actually, it's funny, that day I woke up and was trying to give myself every reason not to even come out here, and it ended up being one of my best bench days. With how 175 felt, I decided to go for 177, and third time was not a charm, as this is the 3rd time this year that I have failed 177. I also ended with my best set of 4 at 155. So the secondary day was triples, and I ended the block with 160 for 3, which I've been super happy with everything. I was super happy with how that ended. Board press, nothing really to write home about. I had dropped the rep schemes to 2, but I randomly had this wrist issue flare out, and so that was week like in between weeks 2 and 3. So I didn't really push it. And then by the time week 4 came around, I ended up getting 200 for 2. So just more putting in the work with 200. Now, of everything in this program, I think my favorite is how the deadlift is set up. It's 2 deadlift days. In block 1, the primary day was a set of 5, and then followed by the single, so similar to bench. And I ended with a PR of 290 for 5, and my best single was 320. I think all but one of my weeks, my single was over 300. And then on that main day, the back downs, you have 3 sets of, they were 3 sets of 5 as the weight decreases, and then you end with 2 sets of 5 of pause. So if you remember, I used to have a whole separate day where my secondary deadlift day was the pause. So it was kind of interesting having these pauses on the main day. Now the secondary day was a cluster deadlift, which I had never done before, and I really enjoyed these. It is essentially a 5x1, but with 45 seconds rest in between. I feel like I'm pretty dialed in now with my setup after all that practice of resetting up after each rep as someone that touch and go. So it's completely different than if I was to do that weight for 1 set of 5. Now block 2 followed the same setup as the bench, and it switched the priority to the single and then the rep work after that. I had a pretty shaky week in there, week 2, that I hitched 310. Like I went into it thinking, oh, easy peasy, and hit the struggle bus real quick. But I came back the following week, hit 315, and then that led us to week 4. And I was just feeling so good that day. I'm like, this might be the day that 350 falls. If you watch my video on my review of my Lululemons, I said I would never wear them for deadlifts because the thought of dragging a deadlift bar up a $100 pair of pants just seemed insane. But I wore them that day, and you can kind of see from the bottom, they're a little big on me. I should have probably sized down. So it is so easy that my hand just got stuck in them on the way up, and I really struggled to lock it out. So I was pretty disappointed that that's where I ended, and again, didn't get a shot at 350, but whatever. It was the heaviest I've touched since the meet, so I wasn't mad about it. But the highlight of that was my rep work after that. I hit a PR of 295 for 4. Almost ran into the same lockout issue on the first one, kind of got it together and finished it out. But I was really having some issues in here with the double bounce. That was the first day deadlifting in here since we had switched some things around, and I don't think it has anything to do with the mats being like different heights or anything, but I don't know what was going on. Every rep was like double bouncing. But I got it done and was pretty happy to end with that PR. So that brings us to current. I just wrapped up deload week this week. This morning I hit a bench single of 165. Yesterday I did deadlift. I hit a single of 290, which just blows my mind that that's a deload weight, a deload single for me. So I'm really looking forward to hitting up this final block pretty hard. And I looked, and week 4 lines up with Christmas. So I'm hoping that Santa brings me some PRs for week 4. But now that we got our life back together out here, I'm hoping to bring more frequent videos and can go into more detail of my training since I won't be doing such a big dump of it at once. So I do have my next meet picked out. That will be in March of 2023. So we'll finish this out and I'll go back to meet prep probably starting in January. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stick around for more content from a garage gym, powerlifting mom, showing you that you don't have to be the strongest to be strong. Thanks. Bye.